grandfathers, along came the FHA, and they had a competitive civil service examination. And he was a very brilliant man. Of course, he was first in life. But I watched all this family coping with all this difficulty. And I'll say this, it sounds awful, but they weren't all that unhappy. You can cope pretty well because you get used to it. That's a nice thing about the human condition. I mean, you get, to be my age, you got a lot of horrible things to get used to. It's just one new indignity all the time. A friend of mine says a good day when you're old is when you wake up in the morning and nothing new hurts. So at any rate, that's my experience in Omaha. But that background, all these people were educated and civilized and generous and decent, and a lot of them had good senses of humor. And it was a pretty damn good place to grow up in. And my memory is of being surrounded by a lot of very fine people. And I think the whole thing was privilege.
School, get a job and get a pen.
Use the old saying, they got the boy out of Omaha, but they never got Omaha out of the boy. And so that, all those old-fashioned values, family comes first, be in a position so you can help others when troubles come, prudent, sensible, moral duty to be reasonable, more important than anything else, more important than being rich, more important than being important. An absolute moral duty, because none of my intelligent relatives suffered terribly because they didn't advance higher.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm fascinated by is, this was in the 20s and 30s, and the level of detail that you recall about their experiences and how that's shaping your experiences now.
Well, I'm trying to give people a flavor of something that nobody else can remember.
Yeah, you're a student of the people that you're experiencing. So you grow up in Omaha, Nebraska. You find yourself in Ann Arbor, Michigan. How does that happen?
Very simple. I wanted to go to Stanford. And my father said to me, Charlie, I was the only son, two sisters. He says, I've got two daughters to educate right after you. I don't have unlimited money. He says, I will send you to Stanford if it really means a great deal to you. But I'd rather you pick a university in the Midwest much better than mine, which was the University of Nebraska. And that was obviously going to be Michigan. What was I going to say? Well, screw you, send me to Stanford. Well, I didn't say that. I went to Michigan. I have never regretted that at all. When I was young, I could get an A in any mathematics course without doing any work at all. And so I always took math because it meant that I could literally, I never did any problem sets, I just did the math. And I should not get credit as some budding mathematician. I was choosing what for me was the easiest way to think about what I wanted to do instead of what somebody else wanted me to do.
Well, come to find out, it ended up being a subject that has, I think, paid some dividends.
Oh, hugely.
Yeah.
But this will interest you in this world where people have all these algorithms and computer science and fancy math and so forth. Neither Warren or I have ever used any fancy math in business, and neither did Ben Graham, who taught Warren. Everything I've ever done in business could be done with the simplest algebra and geometry and addition, multiplication, and so forth. I never used calculus for any practical work in my whole damn life. And I was a perfect whiz at it when they taught it to me. And by the way, since I never touched calculus, not one after I was 19 years old, I've lost it. The symbols would mystify me. But I think you'll find that if you really know the basic stuff, it's enormously useful, and only a very few people are ever going to need any calculus.
So you study math at Michigan, then the war comes calling.
Yes.
You move to California, and you study meteorology.
Well, that was because I was too dumb to do what I should have done. With my background, I should have gone to the Naval ROTC, because I hated infantry ROTC, which I'd done 4 years of in high school, rising to be second lieutenant, which is a very low rank. And Of course, I was about 5'2". I got my growth late, and so I was not your ideal of a manly soldier in high school.
So when you went to Harvard Law, why law?
Well, my grandfather and father had been lawyers, and I knew I didn't want to do everything else. It's very simple. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want all the blood and misery and so forth, and the repetitive work. I knew I didn't want to go to the bottom of a big organization and crawl my way up. I'm a natural contrarian. That was not going to work for me. And I found that people could tell me when I thought they were idiots. And that is not a way to rise in a big organization. and so I couldn't do that. And so now I'm left with law. And I admired my father and grandfather, and a good life for them. So I naturally drifted into it. I think people are still going to law school for that reason. It's the least bad of options considering their interests and ability. I guess now people go to business school, some of them who in my day would have gone to law school. So you had many of the people in this room I think are going to go to business school as the least bad of their options. And all I can say is that that's the way it worked for me, and it'll probably work out for you too.
And it worked out okay.
It worked out okay.
So
I had to leave the profession. It was a dumb profession for me to choose.
So that's actually what I want to ask. So you moved to California, you actually start a law firm, and then practice law for some period of time.
I had no alternative.
And then you actually...
I had an army of children almost immediately. I painted myself in quite a corner.
Yeah. So zero choice is pretty powerful.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, of course.
So you practice law, and then you leave law in the firm that you helped found and move over to investments.
Well, but that sounds miraculous. In fact, it was rather interesting. I probably got paid about $350,000 in my first 13 years of law practice total. And I had an army of children and no capital to start with. And when I chose this alternative career, I had over $300,000 in liquid instruments. And that was 10 years of living expenses. So I was not a courageous, venturesome, admirable man. I was a cautious little squirrel, saving up more nuts than I really needed and not going very deep into my pile of nuts. And so it wasn't that courageous, and I kept one foot in the law firm while I tried my capitalist career. But as soon as the capitalist career succeeded, I intended to lift that second foot because I recognized that the potential of law practice, as I saw it then, I didn't anticipate the boom that came to the big firms. I just saw it as being more difficult, and I wanted more independence than I was going to have as a lawyer. I hated sending other people invoices and needing money from richer people. I thought it was undignified. I wanted my own money. Not because I loved ease or social prestige. I wanted the independence.
Well, and when you founded Wheeler Munger and Company, so that was the investment firm.
Yes.
And
I went and I created 5 real estate projects. I did both side by side for a few years, and in a very few years I had $3 or $4 million.
And for a number of years, you outperformed the market 2x, 3x. And so why did you then leave Wheeler Munger and Company and then